Ladies and gentlemen, we're leaving Downing Street for the last time after 11 and a half wonderful years, and we're very happy that we leave the United Kingdom in a very, very much better state than when we came here 11 and a half years ago. No, no, no. Shall we go for the hat trick?
The Falklands War, one of the most recent wars in British history and considered an unsentimental brawl let in sea, sparked by a demand from the opposing country. In this documentary, we're going to explore how her leadership during the time of the Falklands War influenced and inspired people around the world. Margaret Thatcher has left a big impact on Britain and the way Britain is perceived around the world. Not only was she the first female Prime Minister of the UK, but also her leadership led Britain to a successful victory in the Falklands War. However, she resigned from her tenure because of one mistake, which was the poll tax.
The ladies not for turning.
Margaret Thatcher is a well-renowned British politician whom led Britain to victory in the Falklands War. She was voted as Prime Minister of Britain in the year 1979. She was married to Dennis Thatcher and had 2 kids, Carol and Mark Thatcher. Despite Thatcher being the first female Prime Minister of Britain, she was perceived by the citizens as a role model, and people will usually say that her social revolution endures to this day.
To increase prosperity, increase prestige, and a Britain of which we can all be proud.
Her incumbency started on the 4th of May, 1975 to the 28th of November, 1990. She preceded James Callaghan, and who will be later on succeeded by John Major.
At the beginning of her rise to power, she had very few people on her side, and most nationals would strongly contradict against her actions. In addition, Britain was in an economic decline when she started the role as Prime Minister. Examples of her reckless actions were the abolishment of free milk for school children, in addition to additional financial cuts of the school, voting against the relaxation of divorce laws, destroying British manufacturing industry, and her policies that led to the rise of unemployment. When she started, the unemployment rate just passed 3 million.
On the contrary, after progressing throughout her reign, she started to gain more respect from the public with support of her astute decisions and powerful commands. As well as becoming the first female Prime Minister in British history, she had more success than any other existing Prime Minister. She led Britain to victory in the Falklands War against Argentina, and with that she turned a ruined country into an economic powerhouse and restored her people's faith in themselves.
Very long way. We are, after all, among the very few countries in the world whose constitutions and national identities have remained intact over 2 centuries.
With over 900 casualties from both opposing sides and a rivalry overthrown by surrender of a weaker side, the Falklands War was one of the most memorable and recent wars in British history. The war lasted from April to June of 1982. Geographically, Argentina is about 300 miles away from the Falkland Islands and Britain is around 8,000 miles away. That's 250 times the distance. This gave Argentina advantages as it is closer to the island. Benefits that come with this are easy to ship supplies, closer to homeland, and very easy to send troops back and forth during the war, and much more. In early March of 1982, Argentine scrap metal dealers landed on British sovereign territory, the island of St. Georgia, and claimed it for theirs. This may not seem like a sinister act of invasion, but it was still the British territory and was an illegal act. And the British quickly responded by sending a group of Royal Marine commandos to remove the Argentinians. But then on Friday, April the 2nd of 1982, a larger Argentinian force arrived in the Falkland Islands and took over in an attempt to establish the sovereignty it had long claimed over them. The Argentine military was led by General Leopoldo Galtieri.
Islas Malvinas was the name of the Falklands in the Spanish language, and so Argentina called it that. Before the Falklands invasion, there were much more invasions. The earliest was in 1820 by Colonel Jewett. However, in Argentina, the move into Islas Malvinas would have had a different slope. The Argentine military argued that the British occupation of the islands was a throwback to the days of the British Empire, whereas Britain had used its military might, especially its navy, to take land which simply did not belong to London. The argument held by the Argentine government and also by many people in Argentina was that the islands, being around 200 miles to the east of the Argentine mainland, belong to the nearest country of any importance, which is Argentina.
Islas Malvinas, el 7 de junio 1982. Carta del soldado José Luis Hierro para su familia. Perdonen que hace 8 días que no les mandaba nada, pero aquí nos dijeron que no sale ni entra nada. Yo igual voy a intentar mandar una. Si me llegó telegrama del
I'm sorry
24
I've not
de
sent in
ustedes,
letters for
de
the past
Cristina,
8 days.
y también me
They
llegó
tell
el
us
del
here that
29,
nothing leaves and
pero
nothing
no se
comes
entendía
back.
nada.
I will also try
No
to send a
estaba
letter.
firmado, pero
Yes, I
pienso
received a
es de
telegram
ustedes.
from you on the 24th and
La
also
última
Christina.
carta de ustedes,
I received
del
one
mar,
yesterday from the
de
29th,
plata,
but it was
es
extremely
del
hard to
11
understand.
del 4.
It was not
Y
signed,
después,
but I figured
nada
it was
más.
sent to me by
Mi
you.
última carta
The last
es
of
la
your
que les
letters
mandé
from Mar
desde
de
el
Plata
hospital
was
el
from the
29
11th
del
of
4,
April, and
el
after
30
that,
del 4.
nothing more. The last letter I sent was from the hospital on the 29th or the 30th. This was an extract of a letter that was sent from an Argentine soldier back to his family in Argentina. This letter can show how the soldiers felt during the war and how much they missed their families. The only limitation of this source is that we don't know their expressions when they say these words in the letter.
Not only were the Falkland Islands invaded, the Argentines also occupied South Georgia and the Sandwich Islands. The war lasted for 10 weeks and ending on the 14th of June, 1982. The war included weapons such as destroyers, frigates, LSL ships, LCU crafts, container ships, helicopters, submarine, spy trawlers, coin aircraft, and much more.
After the devastating sinking of the ARA General Belgrano, the Sun newspaper released a notorious headline on the 4th of May 1982 titled Gotcha, which heavily suggested that it was a huge success for the British and they actually wanted to sink it. Not only this, that created a controversy between Argentina and the British. The Sun printed an image of a Polaris missile with the Sun logo on its side and an additional caption that says, "Here it comes, senors." The word senor suggests that it's a message towards the Argentinians since it is in Spanish and Argentina's main language is Spanish. This source may be biased because the Sun newspaper is a British-based newspaper. Even though most of the Argentinians think the sinking of the ARA General Belgrano is a bad thing, but this may be a lifesaver. After the sinking of this ship, no ships left the Argentinian docks since they were afraid of this same incident occurring to that ship. So this incident might have saved some more Argentinian lives.
Sunday, 20th May, 1982. Steaming around in a box inside the 200-mile limit. This is the 4th day we've done this now. Boredom has really set in. One day just runs into the next with no difference. Practice action stations a few times again. At 1800, got the world in news very clearly for a change. At 1810, all ships received this original from Admiral Woodward. The eyes and the ears of the world are upon us. Be strong in resolve, be brave in battle, be merciful in victory. We go in tomorrow morning.
This diary entry, written by Tony Groom, who was a diver in the Royal British Navy's bomb and mine disposal team, can tell us how the soldiers and Navy divers felt during the war and how they perceived the war. The way a commander or general sees the war is a completely different point of view than a soldier's point of view. The last 30 lines of this particular diary entry shows that this person had a decent amount of courage towards this mission he needs to do tomorrow.
Mrs. Diana Gould in our Bristol studio. Mrs. Gould, your question, please.
Mrs. Thatcher.
This interview between Margaret Thatcher and the people about the sinking of the ARA General Belgrano shows how Margaret Thatcher actually felt when she commanded the 3 torpedoes to sink the ARA Belgrano, and whilst only 2 of them impacted the ship. She quite often referred to that the ship was a threat to the British force, even though it was outside the exclusion zone, which was an area that the British made, and they stated that if any opposing ships went inside it, it had to be sunk or destroyed, since it will be a threat to Britain and its force.
In those areas, if they represented a danger to our ships, were vulnerable. When it was sunk, that ship which we had found was a danger to our ships. My duty was to look after our troops, our ships, our navy. And my goodness me, I lived with many, many anxious days.
And we went about it and did it.
Do you think the ceasefire will hold, Prime Minister?
I believe so. I believe so. There's still one or two things. Just listen to everyone. I must go down and talk.